Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to the Netherlands once again, and we're going to have a look at yet another of the beers that I brought back with me from a recent trip down there. So for this one, we are returning to a brewery that has featured on the channel once before. The last beer I had from these guys was very nice, but for this one, we are going to go to the opposite end of the spectrum, and I think that's always a good way to get a measure of what a brewery is all about. But I know that my friends at the Dutch Beer Collective thought this was a really nice beer, so I have to say I'm particularly curious to see how this one turns out because they know their stuff. We know that Dutch beer is a very high standard these days, and it's always nice to review some of these beers for you here on the channel. So fingers crossed it's another good one, and I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this beer as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Den Haag, and we're going to have a look at my second beer from Brouwerij Kompaan, or Kompaan Bier. I'm never sure exactly how to refer to these guys, but this particular beer is called Barrel Boutique. It comes in at 14% ABV, and this one is an Imperial Stout. So from what I understand, this beer is a special version of their Mika Mechanic, the original of which comes in at 12.8% ABV. That's a Russian Imperial Stout with coconut added into the brew, but this particular version has been aged in Het Anker Gouden Carolus single malt whiskey barrels for 12 months, and there's also a portion of it has been aged in bourbon barrels as well, and then they've blended it together, if I have that right. But yeah, I think this beer should be a little bit of a monster actually, and I have to say I'm very curious to try this Gouden Carolus single malt whiskey at some point in time. I've never actually seen it, so it would be really cool to have a taste of that sometime. Maybe the next time I go down to the Netherlands or to Belgium, I'll need to buy a bottle of that to bring back with me. So yeah, I am a bit of a fan of the whiskey, but I would certainly love to do a whiskey review of this one as well. So yeah, we'll need to see about that in the future, but certainly very curious to see how this beer turns out, and as I said earlier, hopefully you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So since this is a Dutch beer review, a massive shout out to my friends in the Dutch Beer Collective. We have Remy Den Dupe, who is Beer Geek Holland, the OG Dutch beer tuber. We have Thomas Hoendam, who is Thomas Opent, my friend and lover. Then we also have Herben Kaspars, who is Dutch Beer Geek, the Black IPA slag. And we have Douglas Hesselmans, who is the most gangster of them all, the newest member to the group. But all four of these guys are doing some awesome reviews. They review in English quite often as well, so do make sure you check them out, give them a subscribe, show them some love, and watch some of their videos. What I'll do is I'll put the link to the Dutch Beer Collective Facebook and Instagram pages in the video description below, and there you can find their channels and go and give them a like and subscribe and things like that. So please make sure you do that. Lovely guys, and you will see them featuring on my channel every so often as well with the live streams and stuff like that. So yeah, keep an eye out for them. But I'm not sure exactly who would have given me this beer, but this one was a gift from one of the guys in the Dutch Beer Collective. All of the stuff got mixed up, and it actually seems that Herben has given me the last couple of beers that I've reviewed. So Herben, if this is one of yours as well, I do apologise for not knowing exactly who gave me what beer. But yeah, we swapped a load of things, and then the stuff that I bought myself got mixed in with everything else, but I'm pretty sure this is one that was given to me by somebody in the Dutch Beer Collective. But yeah, let's crack on with this review then. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Kompaan Bier before, and we will no doubt return to these guys at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the home page and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Dutch beers that I've reviewed for you, and that's being added to quite gradually at the moment because I do have a stream of Dutch beers to work my way through, I guess we could say. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Brouwerij Kompaan then, or Kompaan Bier, we'll just call them Kompaan from now on. So Kompaan, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Den Haag down in the Netherlands, and the company was founded by Jesper Langbroek, Jeroen van Ditmars and Frans ter Stege. So Jeroen comes from a background in engineering, while Jesper came from a background in business and consulting, and the two were avid homebrewers for a number of years. They brewed in Jeroen's kitchen and then in an old school in Morwijk as well. I couldn't actually find out what background Frans came from. There wasn't too much information on him, unfortunately. So yeah, I don't know if he left the company in the early stages or exactly what happened with him. But anyway, so it seems to be that Jesper and Jeroen are the main guys behind this company now. But they brewed their first official batch of Kompaan Bier on the 1st of April 2012, and this was at the Sallandse Landbier Brouwerij, and they continued to gypsy brew in the Netherlands and Germany over the next few years and build up their local distribution and exports. But in 2015, the remaining founders, Jesper and Jeroen, decided to build a new brewery in the Binkhorst district of Den Haag, which has become a little bit of a start-up hub in the city from what I understand, and much of this was funded with around 125,000 euros raised through crowdfunding. But in August of that year, they also opened up their tasting room right next to the brewery on Saturnstraat, and then in 2018 they upgraded the brewery again so that it could produce around 8,000 hectolitres, and there's apparently space to take the brewery up to 20,000 hectolitres with more fermentation tanks, and they are kind of just gradually working up to that number over the next little while from what I understand. But as of May 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 125 different kinds of beer. They've got quite a few different series of things, and they do a lot of different styles. So if you do come across some of the Kompaan beers, I know that these are rated very highly, particularly by the guys in the Dutch Beer Collective. So yeah, Kompaan are definitely one of the Dutch breweries that you need to check out if you get the chance. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Kompaan Bier, Brouwerij Kompaan, however we're supposed to call them. But yeah, as I say, a very well respected brewery down in the Netherlands, and as I said, we know that the Dutch beer scene is very, very strong these days. They've got somewhere in the region of 700 breweries. I do want to get back down there at once this whole COVID-19 pandemic is buggered off, and do a proper tour around and do some of the beer bars and things. It would be really cool to go and film some out and about videos with the guys of the Dutch Beer Collective. Actually, I would love to do that. So yeah, something to think about for the future, absolutely. But yeah, as I say, that's all I can tell you about Kompaan for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's crack on then and have a taste of this beer. So as I told you earlier, this one is a 14% Imperial Stout. It's a special version of their Mika Mechanic, which was a 12.8% Russian Imperial Stout with coconut in it originally. They've aged this one in Gouden Carolus single malt whiskey barrels for 12 months, and there's also a portion of it being aged in bourbon barrels too, and then they've blended it afterwards from what I understand. But yeah, to tell you a little bit about Het Anker and the Gouden Carolus things as well briefly. So Brouwerij Het Anker are based in Mechelen in Belgium, which is in the Dutch speaking area. The company was founded in 1471 as a beguinage or a nunnery brewery, and it continued in this manner for about 300 years when it was then bought by Louis van Briedam in 1872. So it's then passed down his family since. The beers were named Gouden Carolus in the 1960s as a kind of tribute to Charles V of the Holy Roman Empire, who was actually raised in Mechelen. And the company is currently run by Charles Leclerc, who is the 5th generation of the Van Briedam family line. So yeah, quite a famous brewery. I've reviewed maybe 4 or 5 of their beers on the channel before, and like I say, I hope that I can review the Gouden Carolus whiskey at some stage. I would really like to have a go at that. I love trying whiskies and things from different places actually, so that would be my very first Belgian whiskey. So yeah, something we need to look at. So let's get this guy out and we will get on with the tasting then. Just a little quick look at the artwork before we open it up. So there you can see the Kompaan symbol here, and there is Het Anker. So Het Anker, of course, in Dutch means just the anchor. I think Het can also mean like small as well, from what I remember. But yeah, there you can see the Kompaan bottle cap on this one as well, but really nicely presented, and I think that this might well be a bottle that I'll be keeping for my display actually. But yeah, 330ml bottle, this one. I have no idea what this beer would cost. I would guess maybe about €8 or something down in the Netherlands. Their beers aren't too badly priced down there, of course. but they're not quite as cheap as what we get up here in Sweden because we've got the Systembolaget, of course. But yeah, I think probably about €8-9, something like that for this beer, I would guess. So yeah, 14% barrel-aged Imperial Stout, bit of a monster. Let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. Very, very curious to see how this turns out. And thank you to whoever it was in the Dutch Beer Collective that gave me this beer to review. This one is an absolute monster, actually. So let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting then. This should hopefully be a very, very nice beer. I've got a little bit of a crick in my neck today when I'm filming this, so I'm not quite as flexible as I normally am. So yeah, if I seem a bit robotic in this video, that's why. I don't know what I did to my neck. I just pulled something and it's quite painful. So yeah, let me see. I think that's lined up. I think that's lined up just now. My OCD has to be happy in the videos, of course, as well. Got to get these things lined up so that they look nice. But yeah, as you can see, this beer has poured with virtually no head to it. But to be honest, at 14% ABV, I think you can forgive it for that. There is just a very thin sort of foamy ring around the edge of the glass. And I would say that it's a kind of fawn colour, but yeah, it does look a little bit more fawny rather than being sort of beige or dark or anything like that. But in terms of the colour of this beer, this one is pretty much as black as you're going to get. This one is a very dark ebony kind of colour. But there's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones heading up towards the surface there. But you can see this beer is pretty damn thick actually. It looks very nice. Remember, the colour of your beers depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This determines the magnitude of the colour of your beer, and then 2, the length of your wort boil. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, thus you get a darker colour of beer. Barrel aging and adjuncts can also affect the colour of beer, but when it comes to Imperial Stouts, usually it's the malts that are the determining factor in these things. But I have to say, yeah, it looks like an absolute monster of a beer, this one. It's pretty much black as night. If I shine the light through it, you get a little tiny hint of a kind of Coca-Cola colour to this beer. You get a tiny little hint of a kind of Coca-Cola colour to this beer. Just as the light passes through the front edge, but otherwise this thing is pretty much as dark as they come. But that's what you would expect from an Imperial Stout. There's nothing particularly surprising about that. But yeah, let's have a little look at the aroma then and see how we get on with this one. I'm really curious about this beer. That's a lovely smelling beer. I'm just going to say that straight away. Yeah, the aroma of this one is that's something else. So it's beautiful. I'm just going to say straight away, the aroma of this beer is absolutely beautiful. You can smell, you know, it's got there's a lovely Imperial Stout sitting on top of this, and then you've just got the whiskey notes that you have out of this are lovely. It's very different from Scotch whiskey or from bourbon, in fact. I don't even know how you would kind of describe that. It's almost like somewhere in the middle of whiskey and bourbon. As I've told you in other reviews, when it comes to Scotch whiskey barrel aging, I've always found that Scotch whiskey can be a little bit more sort of spicy and a little bit more grainy, whereas the American bourbons are very smooth and very sweet. This one has a little bit of both of that, and it's maybe even got a potential little touch of citrus or something to it as well. But yeah, the barrel aging notes that you get out of this are lovely. They've got the smoothness of the American bourbons, but a little bit more of the kind of the sort of rawness and graininess of the Scotch whiskies in a sense. That's lovely. So yeah, where do we start with this then? The backbone of this beer is that lovely, smooth, oaky character, and you can feel the wood has a little bit of a dryness to it, and there's a little bit of a slight, you know, kind of leathery type quality to the barrel aging notes in here. At the same time, you do get a little bit of a kind of sweet brown sugar and a wee touch of vanilla out of it. So yeah, you're getting wee bits of everything. I would love to, as I say, I would love to taste the Gouden Carolus whiskey at some stage and see what that's all about. My first ever Belgian whiskey. But yeah, the barrel aging notes that you get out of this beer are absolutely lovely. Smooth, really smooth wood. There's a little bit of dryness in there. I wouldn't call it spicy, but you can smell that the wood is very, very slightly dry. Some lovely leathery notes in there. Definitely a bit of vanilla, and you do get a wee bit of the kind of brown sugary notes from the bourbon as well. Actually, I think, you know, doing this blend of, you know, Scotch barrel, you know, a kind of, well, as we say, doing a blend of a a Gouden Carolus whiskey, but also using a little bit of a beer that's been aged in a bourbon barrel just to smoothen it out a wee bit. I think that works. I think that does work really nicely as well, come to think of it. So yeah, the way that this beer goes about its business is really interesting for sure. So the barrel aging side of this beer, I think, is going to be something a wee bit special. But we've only described the backbone of the beer itself. We've only described the barrel aging side of it so far, but already you can tell this one is a pretty damn complex beer. So let's focus on the kind of malty side of the beer. So sitting on top of this one, then you can definitely pick out. There's a lovely big chocolatey note sitting on top of this. It's a very thick. I think, would this beer have oats in it? Does it say? Would it say? No, actually. Oh no, it does. Sorry, here we go. So malted barley, oats, hops, coconut and yeast. So yeah, I was going to say with this one, you can tell from the smoothness that it has, that it's got a nice oaty kind of backbone to it. You can tell that sort of straight away with this beer, because you just smell on top of the wood. You can smell there is a bit of a separation of aroma with this beer in a sense between the barrel aging and the the sort of malty part of the beer itself, but you can sort of smell the thickness of the oats from the chocolatey side of things. So for me, the chocolate that you get in this beer, it has a big thick quality to it. So there's about a 60% cocoa note in this beer. You can smell that because it has some of the milkier elements as well, so you can get about a 30-40% cocoa chocolate out of this, but you also get a slightly darker 60% cocoa. But overall, it comes across as very smooth because of the oaty character that's in this beer. So yeah, the big oaty notes that you get out of this are very, very nice, in fact. So yeah, lots of chocolate in this one. You can definitely smell a bit of that coconut in there as well. Actually, you can smell towards the kind of front of the nose, you get a little bit more of that kind of coconutty quality coming out of this beer, which is really nice. But there's quite a bit of brown sugar in this one for me as well, but it takes a bit of a back seat to the chocolate and the coconut, I would say. But certainly in the middle of the nose, you can pick up a big sort of treacly, molassesy quality, and you get a little bit of a more sweet caramel and a bit of a toasty brown sugar out of the beer as well. But the brown sugar notes are quite subtle compared to the coconut and the chocolate in this one for me, and you can just smell the oats. The sort of thick, the chocolate comes across as very thick, I would say, and that's what gives away the oats. That's what I got when I was like, oh, has this beer got oats in it? But definitely this one comes across as nice and big and thick. I think actually on Untappd, when I had a little look at the Mika Mechanic, it's listed as an Imperial milk stout, so that would kind of make sense actually. So yeah, I think this one should be quite nice. Does it have actually? No, it doesn't. It doesn't have lactose in it. So yeah, I was just wondering if it was a milk stout, would it have lactose in it? But yeah, I think this one should be should be quite an interesting beer. But yeah, the hoppy side of things then. So you can detect little hints of the hoppy side of things. There's a wee touch of earthiness in there and a little bit of grassiness. Other than that, not a lot. But remember, when this is a barrel aged beer, quite a lot of the hoppy character will have dropped out of this. As well, you have the fact that it's an Imperial stout, so it's not the most hop forward style of beer, of course, especially when it's going to lean towards the sweeter side of things. So yeah, bear that in mind. Not too much hoppy character this one, a little tiny bit of earthiness, a little bit of a kind of grassy quality as well, but otherwise it's otherwise, you know, it is quite a nice just all round smelling beer, this one. On the fruity side of things, it's interesting because you definitely get a wee bit of that kind of raisiny sharp. You get a little bit of a raisiny note out of the beer, a little bit of the more juicy blackcurrant, but it actually comes across with I should say blackberry, not blackcurrant, but you do get underneath a little bit of that kind of figgy, a little bit of that figgy kind of blackcurrant, yeah, a little bit of that figgy kind of blackcurranty vibe out of the beer, but it's also got a wee bit of a kind of dried fruity sultana cakey element to it. So just bear that in mind with this beer. It's got a lovely aroma that's very complex actually. So yeah, the aroma of this one is really nice, and the whiskey just pushes its way up. You get this slightly, you get the nice woody notes coming out of this beer all the way. But this is a beautiful smelling beer. Definitely take a bit of time to appreciate the aroma of this one before you get stuck into it. This is taking me a little bit of a longer time to go over, of course, but yeah. That's par for the course. But I think it's about time that we get stuck into this beer then. This one is the Barrel Boutique 14% Imperial Stout, Russian Imperial Stout originally, but aged in Gouden Carolus whiskey barrels for 12 months with a bit of bourbon barrel aging as well. Let's get stuck into this one from Brouwerij Kompaan in Den Haag in the Netherlands. Thank you again to whoever it was in the Dutch Beer Collective that gave me this beer. Make sure you go and check out these guys. But let's get stuck in. Slanje, Skål, Prost. Oh yeah, that is pretty special. Very, very smooth. Just, I think I've got it just at the right temperature as well. But that is a beautiful, beautiful beer. Yeah, very grateful for this one. Absolutely. If you do see a bottle of this, just buy it. You know, this is very, very good. Have a go at this one and just see what you think. This is a really, really nice barrel aged Imperial Stout. Absolutely. So yeah, where do we start with this one? We'll just go through it in the same way we did as the Aroma, I guess. But yeah, let's start with the barrel aging side of things. You can feel the warmth off this as well. But yeah, straight away across the middle of your palate, you can feel that lovely smooth. You can feel that lovely smooth oaky note in there. So yeah, you've got that lovely smooth oaky quality there. You can feel the wood has a little touch of dryness to it. As I said, the kind of whiskey notes you get are the whiskey notes that you get are quite it's almost like somewhere in between Scotch whiskey and American bourbon. It's got a little bit of the kind of more dry, kind of grainy quality, if you like, of the Scotch whiskey, but there is a bit of the smoothness and the slight sweetness of the American bourbon. So yeah, middle of your palate, lovely smooth, woody, lovely smooth woody backbone with this one, which I really like. But yeah, sitting on top of that, you just got all these layers. So yeah, you've got the smooth woodiness, then you can feel that on the back half of your of the middle third of your palate, you get a little bit of dryness out of the wood. You can feel a little bit of that dry note there, but sitting on top of that, of course, you get the kind of leathery qualities. And on the front half of the middle third of your palate, you can feel the slight you can feel a little bit of the slight vanilla type sweetness, but then the leathery qualities just sit on top of that. Sitting on top of the leathery layer, you've got that wee bit of the actual kind of whiskey flavour itself. So it's really interesting. The barrel aging side of this beer is really layered in itself. So yeah, base of smooth wood, and the back half it's a little bit more kind of spicy. On the front half of the middle third of your palate, a bit more vanilla. The leathery notes sit on top, and then you've got that nice layer of the kind of whiskey flavour itself. And it's weird because like right about here, I can feel here there's just a little bit of that little, you know, that kind of almost whiskey burn that you get out of the beer. So that's very interesting. But as you go into the back third of your palate, you can feel the wood spreading out again, and that's where you get a little bit more of the kind of spicy side of the little bit more of the kind of spicy grainy side of the wood and the whiskey there. So I really like how that goes together. The barrel aged side of this beer, I think, is just it's very unique, but I think it works very, very well with the beer that's been put on top of it, actually. I'd love to see them do a Scotch ale that's aged on these on this whiskey barrel. I think that would turn out really nice, or a barley wine as well. I think would be a really interesting way. But the stout certainly does the job, absolutely. So yeah, the barley side of this beer is very unique, and it's, if you do see this, try it, because it's very, very good. It's really good. So yeah, let's move on to the kind of malty side of the beer on top of the barrel aged things then. So on top of the barrel aging component of the beer, you can feel that smooth oaty quality there. That just sits right bang on top. Oh, that sits right bang on top of the it sits right bang on top of the barrel aged components of the beer. So you can feel that nice smooth oaty thickness in there. And the oats, I would say, you know, the oats don't contribute too much to the flavour of the beer. Oats for me are more of a kind of mouthfeel kind of thing when it comes to Imperial Stouts. They contribute a little bit more in the lighter beers like the New England IPAs, but it's sort of the way that they kind of make the other flavours behave that's quite interesting. But you can feel that nice, you get like a kind of circle in the middle third of your palate, and that's where the thick oatiness comes out of the beer. So mixing in with the oats, you've got that nice kind of chocolatey quality. So on the back half of that middle third of your palate, you can get a little bit more of the kind of stronger, darker chocolate in there, you know, a sort of 60% cocoa type thing. But then as you go into the front half of that, middle third of your tongue, it starts to get a little bit more milky. You get the sort of 30-40% cocoa chocolate coming out of this one. So that's a really interesting point there too. It's also worth noting that on that front half, you can feel within that milky chocolate, that's where the coconut starts to come out of the beer as well. You can really feel that coconut quality on the front half of that middle third of your palate. But yeah, in the very centre part of your tongue, that's where you get a lot of the brown sugary component out of this beer. So yeah, in the very centre of your palate, you absolutely get a little touch of that. It has got a wee bit of that treacle molasses sort of thing. I mean, remember, an Imperial Stout like this is going to undergo a boil of several hours, and that's when you're going to get the big caramelisation of sugars. So for me, there is a good little bit of a treacly molasses sort of thing right in the middle of your palate. You do get a sweeter caramel as you move a little bit further out from that, and then there's a wee touch of a kind of biscuity element to this beer as well. So yeah, I really like how this one, I really like how this beer goes about its business from that side of things. So yeah, a lovely big, how would you say, just a lovely sort of, it's got a lovely kind of spectrum, if you like, of brown sugar. So really thick treacle molasses, a bit of a sweeter caramel, then a little bit of a more toasty and crispier brown sugar, if you like, as you move out towards the edge of the palate. But I think that covers the middle third of your palate quite well on this one. I think that's it. This is where the most complex part of the beer is, of course. So yeah, if we go to the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, again, you can feel a little bit of a slightly thicker build up there. There's a wee touch of a kind of almost black malty note there. You do get a little bit of bitterness, but then as you go into the back third of your palate, as I say, the base layer is the barrel aging side of things, and you do get a little bit more of the kind of grainy and slightly spicy, drier side of the barrel aging there as well. Sitting on top of that though, you get some of the yeasty components out of the beer, and you can feel that at the back, on the back third of your palate, the beer is just a little bit, the flavour feels a little bit taller, if you like. So as you come further forward, the flavour condenses down a wee bit, and as you go into the middle third of your palate, it feels a little bit kind of thicker and things like that. So yeah, it feels like a little bit more dense, I should say, not thicker. So yeah, that's really interesting with this one. I always like looking at the sort of dynamics of the mouth, the dynamics of the flavour in the beer in these beer reviews as well. But it certainly works, and that's the most complex part of the beer, I would say, is the kind of middle third of your palate, but then the back third of your palate contributes a little bit. That's where you get some of the kind of, you know, more airy, yeasty components coming out of the beer. But yeah, it's lovely. The way that this goes together is very, very nice. So I think that covers the malty and barrel aging side of the beer. Let's go to the hoppy side of things then. Back corners of the palate, you can pick up a little bit of earthiness there. But as you move further forward, the side of the beer is very, very smooth actually. You know, you do get a little bit of a floral note on the front corners of the palate, and then around the front curve of the tongue, it's a wee touch lighter and more grassy, I would say. So I really like how that pieces together in this beer as well. The sort of grassiness that you get out of this one is very, very nice. But yeah, I think it works together. I think the way that goes together is very, very nice in this one. But the hoppy side of the beer, I would stress, that does take a little bit of a back seat. But when it's a barrel-aged Imperial Stout, especially a sort of sweet Imperial Stout, as it was originally with the the Mika Mechanic, then the hops are not the most prominent part of the beer, we should say. But yeah, the hoppy side of the beer works really well with everything else. Front third of your palate then, let's focus on the fruity side of the beer. So again, border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you do feel a little bit of a thicker build up in this one, a wee touch of a graininess, but then the base of that front third of the beer, it almost feels a little bit sort of, you can feel a little bit of the oaty quality in there, so you've got the wood underneath and the kind of whiskey component in there, and then you've got a little bit of the oaty quality, but sitting on top of this, that's where you get the nice oily bubble where the fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So for me, this one actually comes across on the fruity side of things. I get a lot of sultana and a little touch of a very slightly kind of, you know, cakey note out of the beer, and that sits at the back half of that front third of your tongue. So yeah, you've got that lovely kind of sultana quality out of the beer. You do get a tiny little bit of a raisiny note in this one, but sitting underneath for me, there's a lot of a kind of sultana quality to it, maybe a little touch of like a dried apricot or something. But as you move further forward, you get a wee bit of a figgy note out of the beer, and then a dried sort of blackcurranty quality on this one, as a little bit of a kind of blackcurranty note on this one as you go further forward. But yeah, get a wee bit of a kind of juicier blackberry quality coming out of the beer as well. So yeah, you get a little bit of that kind of blackberry note coming out of this one too, which I think works very, very well. So yeah, I think the fruity side of the beer on this one is quite interesting. I'm just surprised at how sort of dry the fruity character is in it too, but it works, it certainly works. And as I say, this is a beautiful, beautiful beer, this one. One of my favourite stouts I think I've had over the last little while for sure. This one works very well, so it gets a big thumbs up from me. But I think that kind of summarises the flavour profile of this beer as much as I would like to be honest with you. So let's round off the review with the mouthfeel then. So for me, this beer, I would say that it's full-bodied. I would say that it's full-bodied, but it's at the bottom end of full-bodied. But remember, with barrel-aged beers, you always sacrifice a little bit of the mouthfeel to give you some of these more kind of infused flavours. So yeah, it's bottom end of full-bodied for me, very, very smooth carbonation, and it's got a really nice kind of, it has a really nice kind of cleanliness to it as well, I would say. But the malt base, the barrel aging side of things for me is really nice and smooth, but it's got a little touch of dryness to it there. It almost finds its medium between Scotch whisky and an American bourbon, so I can really appreciate that about this beer. But then the malty side of things is very smooth and leans towards the sweeter side of things. Not a lot of influence from the hops. I would say if we're talking about IBUs, I'd be surprised if this beer is, I think this beer might even just be about 30 IBUs or something like that. The dryness, you know, some of the bitterness that you pick up out of this beer might well just be dryness from the kind of woody barrel aged component of this one, but you've got a lovely dried fruity quality coming out of this beer too. But overall, this is a beautiful, beautiful beer, and one of my favourite stouts I've reviewed over the last little while. So to the guys at the Dutch Beer Collective who gave me this, a massive thank you to you. I think this is a beautiful, beautiful beer, and I'm certainly glad I got the chance to review this one for you here on the channel. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this review. This one was the Barrel Boutique, a 14% Imperial Stout, a variant of the Mika Mechanic. That one was a 12.8% Russian Imperial Stout with coconut added into it, but this beer comes from Brouwerij Kompaan, Kompaan Bier, whatever we're supposed to call them, from Den Haag down in the Netherlands. Beautiful stuff this, and I would highly, highly recommend this beer. One of my favourite stouts over the last little while. But thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Kompaan as well. We will no doubt return to these guys at some point in the near future, but in the meantime, thank you for watching. Check out my friends at the Dutch Beer Collective, check out my other reviews from the Netherlands as well, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Slange, skull, cheers, and make sure you have a go at this beer if you get the chance. Cheers.